of info tonight. We got a couple of things going on. One is a PowerPoint presentation on Ken Holmes on the new courthouse proposal, and then we'll have a roundtable. We had 2 more candidates coming. We invited 5, and 3 out of the 5 were accepted. So, Reverend Cox, you come forward and give us the invitation.
I will, and don't forget that we do have the, I'm going to turn this on.
Okay.
Could we all bow our head? Heavenly Father, we just thank you for being able to come together tonight. Father, we just thank you that we've got this group of people who have enough concern about their community and their country that they have come here tonight to support the Republican conservative values. Father, we just hope moving forward that the people in this room can impact others in this county, and we can have a great election this November. Father, we're just asking you to lift us up and help us during this time of need. We ask this in the mighty name of Jesus, and may we all say,
Amen.
Amen.
Now, if we will all turn, our flag is over here. You can't really see it. See our pledge. Everybody sing, please. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. All right. Appreciate it. Okay. Alice, can you hear me back there?
I can, yes.
Good. Okay. Also, we have water and coffee in the back. If anybody wants any water or coffee, we have that in the back. So feel free to help yourself to that. Again, thank you for coming. Thank you again to the visitors who are here and see some new faces. So thank you for coming out also. We have a long night, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. But just a couple things. We're still phone banking Monday through Friday, 5 to 8 p.m. here. So if you want to come out and do phone banking, you can phone bank for any candidate here. So we offer this as a service. Also, voter registration ends on October 9th, and early voting starts on October 15th. The other thing, if you haven't voted in 2 or 3 years, and I know most of you have voted, but if you know people who haven't voted in the last 2 or 3 years, you may want to have them go and make sure they're what we call actively registered, because they will. How many elections is it, Larry or Alice? If you miss, if they make you inactive here in Rockdale? Two. So if you miss 2 elections, you become inactive. So basically, if you haven't voted in a couple of years, and you know people who haven't, and they say they're registered, they really need to go and make themselves inactive.
Mr. Barger,
Yeah, Gerald, our election.
where is one there about, was it 7,000 or 9,000 inactive right now? About 7,000. 7,000.
Right. Because I specifically remember during the 2060 campaign, a lot of people who wanted to vote for Trump hadn't voted in 10 years. And they had registered, but, they have to go and get themselves activated again. Also, go ahead.
If somebody's not sure, they can go on Secretary of State's office.
That's right.
And there it says, am I registered? You can go and see if you are.
Right, and thank you, Eleanor. And additionally, I'm going to be sending out an email from the Kent campaign, and thank you, what's your name, Tommy, for you guys sending that. I got it from Tim Fleming, and they have all kind of good info on there, just what you were talking about. You can click a button and go right there and see what your status is. So if you're not on our email list, make sure you get with our secretary, Jerry Bird, and she will get you on there, because we send out all kind of good info, things like that. And also, speaking of Miss Bird, if you want to make any donations, pay any bills, she is our bank. She's sitting back there waiting for you to give her some money, okay? So feel free to do that. Our events coordinator is not here, but Larry, I know you work closely with her. I think we got the Fall Festival planned on October 20th, right?
We do. We have we're going to have a booth at the Fall Fest.
Right.
And we are having a debate this coming Saturday at the NAACP. Coach, were you invited?
Yeah, she's there.
Well, I know, but they didn't do a very good job of inviting. I was never personally invited. Well, I know. But then I called and talked to them, and they did not do a very good job of reaching out to candidates. Yes.
Yeah.
So we're having that debate this coming Saturday at the what is that?
Antioch Church.
It's off of Johnson.
Right. And you can go to our website. It'll be on there if you need to find out anything.
And then also, I know I will be, and my dog Molly will be marching in the Pink Pooch Parade on October the 14th.
Good choice.
So anyone of you that would like to come and participate or watch me and Molly march in the Pink Pooch Parade, we will be there October 14th in Old Town.
Good. Okay, well, what I want to mention, in addition to Larry and Dakota, of course, Dakota is running for House District 90, Larry's running for Rockdale County Commissioner. Joe Crawford texted me, he's on his way, he's running for 4th District Congressman. And then our own famous Charles Chance is running for Soil and Water Commission. Supervisor, okay, it's right here, I'll let him talk about it. Charles, speaking of, since I mentioned your name, come on up here and give your name a little bit.
How much do you want me to say?
Well, you're going to pass the hat, too.
Well, yeah, let me get that done first. We started a new tradition. You know, money is muscle, we said that last time. This is the third time we've done this. But I do want to make one point about collecting money at a meeting. Obama, when he first ran, was expected, when you walked in his headquarters or wherever he was, you put $5 in the till, okay? Now, we always bitch and moan, pardon my French, about the big money interests are taking control of everything. Well, there's a reason for that. Us little money people don't put it up, okay? Now, I'm not going to ask you to put in a lot of money in. In fact, if you reach in your pocket, you might have some change. Now, if you're feeling a little bit more generous, you might want to throw some more money in. Let's go.
You always give it to the preacher man first, right?
Is this money for your campaign and all the
No,
others?
not my campaign.
It's for everybody's campaign?
I get no money at all.
It basically goes to try and cover the campaign of this.
Okay.
For our campaign network,
Okay.
which we use for candidates to come in and use it for
Right.
homemaking and
Okay.
Let me segue into this. The Soil and Water Supervisor, Ron, whatever the hell it is nonpartisan. So everybody knows where I stand politically. However, I'm running as a nonpartisan. That means that I get no money at all from the Republican organization. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah, we haven't written you a check in a minute.
Yeah, right. You give it to me in a little white envelope, okay? But seriously, I want to say something about this soil and water thing. There was a big article in the newspaper about this art farm. I don't know if anybody followed it. I got the article here, but I did want to give one little paragraph here. Eleanor Davis, who was one of us, challenged this guy, Joe Elford. She said he has not given the county a site plan, a survey, a soil study, or updated a floodplain. The purview of a soil and water supervisor is to check that out, okay? And when I'm elected, I will see that that happens. There's something else that's very interesting. This is a letter from the Rockdale County Soil and Water Conservation District. It's from Athens, Georgia, from the manager of the, I can't even read the damn thing. But anyway, it says, the Rockdale County Soil and Water Conservation District respectfully requests that the Georgia Soil and Water Conservation Commission conduct a formal and comprehensive overview of the practices, procedures, and enforcement of Rockdale County government as the local issuing authority for land disturbance, permitting, and erosion and sediment control activities, as well as the federal permit. In particular, the district is concerned regarding land disturbances at 2011 Klondike Road. Does everybody know where that is? That's right off of West Street, okay? They've got this big development going in up there, right? Furthermore, the district respectfully requests that the Stakeholders Advisory Board review the level 1A or blue card status of the grading contractor, Quincy Jones, who performed the site work on this property. The district requests the board to consider revoking Mr. Jones' certification. This was sent to Nesbitt, Williams, Washington, Attaway, Westbury, Hackney, Marshall, and Davis. These are our county officials. To the best of my knowledge, nothing has happened. Okay? This was dated December of last year. Okay? Now, I will do my best on that, and I'm going to segue. I'll be running a roundtable. This question I'm going to be throwing at Larry and to Kosha about what they might want to do with this when they get in office. Because the guy, his name is Rusowitz, is from the state, and of course Larry will be on the board. So that's kind of where I'll be going
Thank you, Charles.
with this.
Appreciate it.
Okay?
Okay.
And thank you for the contributions, guys.
Yeah, thank you very much. We also have a representative from the Bryan Kent campaign, it's Mr. Tommy Gormley. Tommy, can you say a few words about the Kent campaign?
We actually really need help getting out and knocking on doors in this area or making calls. I didn't realize y'all were running a phone bank all the time here, but that is great. If y'all would like any help from us, if we have enough people, we could get together and have a phone bank on a Tuesday or on a one night a week kind of basis. And anybody who wants to help knock on doors or help set up a phone bank or volunteer with the campaign, I have a sign-up list at the sign-in table. If y'all want to help out, please do. We really need the help, and keep chomping.
Thank you, Tommy. And I don't have to tell you guys, we need every Republican vote we can get on November 6th this year. It's going to be a real tight race. So anybody you talk to, even a slight Republican, get them up off the couch, show them out. Mr. Victor.
Yeah, we're having a little side conversation here, and there is a concern that there are a lot of people out there, and you mentioned that earlier, that haven't voted in a couple of years, and they don't know what's going on. And then there's a lot of folks out there that aren't registered, and what is the party doing to go and grab all of those people, get them registered, and then get them to the polls during early voting, and then...
I'm going to be honest with you. When you say party, you're talking about the state party, or you're talking about...
I'm talking us folks here in this room.
We're not really doing much at all, but even at a state level, in terms of registering Republicans to vote, I haven't seen any of that coming forward either. I don't know, you can correct me if I'm wrong, Tommy, I don't know what you guys are doing in regards to that.
I'm not sure exactly, but I know with the app that we're using, we're able to register people to vote.
Right.
That who want to be registered. So.
Yeah, and I think what John is addressing, because I've gotten calls from Democratic officers also, and they will say, if you're not registered to vote, we'll call you up and you can actually register your vote. And I haven't got one call from public court. Go ahead, Tom.
Toby, I'd like to address something.
Okay, let Tommy speak and then you go ahead.
Said something quick, so I was curious if they had changed the forum on how absentee votes are sent in. Obviously I deliver mail, but I deliver to the elections office today, as a matter of fact. And for the amount of absentee ballots, it used to be if you were going to be out of the state, out of the country, everything else, we're getting like 100 a day. And this county's not that big, and this has been going on for weeks. Has something changed that I don't know about?
You don't have to be out, you can just request one.
Because it didn't, we used to only have a couple a day. I probably had 100
Yeah,
today.
you can actually just request it for any reason.
And that's part of the
I have no
Democrats' bill
reason.
also. If they register to vote, they often, in the party's bill, it's also, you can get absentee ballot.
Well,
All you gotta do is just
Charles,
contact them.
Charles, your wife just did an absentee, correct?
That's right.
So they're just trying to make it easier for everybody.
But when we do talk about the potential for voter fraud,
Yeah.
there is where the true potential
That's where,
is,
yeah.
because you don't have to provide an ID.
And that's what former Lieutenant Governor, well, he's still the Lieutenant Governor, David Schaefer addressed that at one of our meetings, that that's really the biggest area of fraud,
But
more so than any other place.
I'd like to address John's question about voter registration in Rockdale County. Our population, the commission and some other people on now will try to say it's 92, 93 million. I think we've got to go, what the official number was, that the,
89.
well, it's 8889. That's the number you have to really go at. And when I was at the election board's meeting last month, they read the number of people that are registered voters in Rockdale County, and it's 63,000 people. So if you've got 63,000 people that are registered, and then we have, what we have in our school system, 17,000 kids in the school system, so you add that number up, there are very few people who actually aren't registered in the county, and it's because of the new law regarding the driver's license renewals. In the state of Georgia now, when you renew your license, you are automatically registered to vote unless you opt out. So at some point, we're going to have a very high voter registration number and a low participation number. So now when they say that we've got 50, 60, 70% voter turnout, those numbers will probably end up in the near future being in the 20s and 25s, even on a high turnout.
But Larry, the 63,000 includes the inactive.
It includes the inactive, but they are registered voters.
Right.
So, and they have to reactivate themselves.
Right.
But 63,000 of the 88 or 89,000 are registered voters in Rockdale County now. And we've got, you would have close to 20,000 residents even under the age not being able to vote. So that takes you up to around 83,000. So that probably puts you in the neighborhood anywhere from 6,000 to 10,000 people that may be able to be registered. That's
Okay.
I just moved into the county 60 days ago, so I haven't done my license. If I do my license, I'm registered, but am I automatically activated, or do I have to do both?
You should be automatically activated, but with it being this close to the deadline,
I would go down.
I would go to the voter registration
You
office.
got to October 9th, which is next Tuesday.
But because you've got one state agency has to coordinate with another state agency to make you that way, and I really wouldn't trust that to happen.
The odds are he won't get transferred that quick.
We won't, will it, Jerry?
No.
So you need to go to the election.
Okay, I'll definitely go there. Brent, you got a question?
The ones who are inactive, do we have a list of those, or are we making an effort to contact them?
That's a good question, Larry. Do we?
No,
do we get an active?
Gerald, you've got
Oh, we got a list of the voters, so we can
You have
actually.
the inactive list, correct?
And
The inactive voters list, that's available?
I've got ear dates on
I said, would the inactive voters list be available?
Yes.
Yes. We don't have it, and let's just be honest with you. Why don't we do everything everybody wants us to do? Now, there's about 3 or 4 of us that do anything in this way. And that's why. And I'm running for office, and I used to do a lot of stuff with party stuff, but now I'm running a campaign. So my priority now is actually the campaign thing. So when there are 3 or 4 of us that do everything, you can't do everything. You have to prioritize and do what you can do.
And we
And
have,
that's why we want people to get involved and volunteer.
yeah, we calculated we have about, we can count on about 15,000 Republican voters here in Rockdale.
Yeah.
Right? And they vote consistently when they turn out, but, you know, we don't get that much participation in terms of helping the party out.
Anybody that sends out, will go by Parker Road and make sure
Right.
about that.
Yeah.
that takes care of us, but it doesn't take care of those people who don't know what to do. They're inactive.
Well, you know what, I would actually say most of the people that are inactive aren't even aware they're inactive. And now I'd say we have a good portion of people who are registered voters, and because they did it happened when they got their license renewed, they don't even know they're registered voters.
There's also the question of how you reach those people without amassing a major expense trying to do it.
Yeah.
Can we not call them from the phone bank? Is the phone bank
I don't think we have their phone numbers on the inactive list. I think the inactive list only has like their name, ages, and addresses, correct? Larry and Alex, Gerald?
I think they have a restoration list.
Well, yeah, we get phone numbers from a different way. The list that we get from, no, we get the phone numbers in from a different list. We would not have access to those.
Yeah.
They're on the inactive list, can they just go in and vote?
No.
registered voters?
No,
No.
no, they can't. If they showed up to vote, they would be turned down.
And so they have to do something to get
Yeah,
activated?
exactly.
Before October the 9th.
The very best way to do it is for everybody, individuals, to download the MVP My Voter Page app and talk to their friends. You can check their registration right there on the app on your phone and get them registered. That's the best way. It's an individual one-on-one interaction, unfortunately. We could go to the expense of doing a mailer if we had the money, which I don't believe we
No, we
even do for that at the moment, but we'd be looking at thousands and thousands of dollars to reach those people.
So if they're on the inactive list, then in effect, they're not registered voters. Is that right?
No, they are registered voters, they're inactive
They
voters,
just have to go
which is,
reactivate themselves.
They don't have to register again.
Right.
Yes.
They do have to
they
register.
they just have to go get activated themselves.
What is the activation process? Just walk into the Parker Road office and say, please activate?
Yeah, you just walk in and talk to them and they'll activate.
And Tommy, you probably can answer this. Can they reactivate online or will they have to go?
I don't.
You don't know, okay.
Gerald, do you know, can they do it?
I think they can, I'm sitting there thinking, I believe you can do it online, Secretary of State.
Right. Yeah. I would tell them to go online first just to see if they can do it.
I would make one caution with that. I activated mine 2 weeks ago when I first moved in,
Right.
and Larry was just looking to see if it was, and I'm not.
Yeah, Alex and I we just looked up Jeff, and Jeff was inactive, and we
Yeah.
looked up CJ,
I did.
and she was
She
active.
was active.
Oh, okay, yeah, so, yeah, well, Larry told you right, you need to go down, correct?
Yeah, I'm going to.
You got,
Yeah,
because where you
You got
did.
tomorrow and.
Gerald, what's usually the lag time if you don't go to an office directly?
Right.
If you don't go to the office directly, what's usually the lag time?
Well, that's what worries me. If you go to the state or even on the website, you don't know how long it's going to take for them to transfer it.
To the county.
County.
But if you go directly to
You
the
go-
county office,
you
it's
go-
right then.
1400 Parker Road, they can do it right there.
Okay, well, thank you, guys. We're gonna go ahead and get things started, and of course, during the roundtable, we might even discuss that a little more, guys. So,
Okay.
Ken's gonna do the courthouse proposal, and this is our courthouse committee's counter proposal to the $140 million bond proposal. And I think Ken had, and his team, have come up with something in the $10 to $20 million range, which is a long way from $140 million. So Ken, come do your thing.
You need all of them or just what's in the front?
Runs in the front. So everybody, I think in the room, can everybody see okay? Everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
So everybody knows that the big problem with the $140 million
You got it.
loss proposal
You got it.
was the lack of transparency, that nobody knew about anything that was going on until it was almost a fait accompli. So because of that, the county formed a committee to come up with a different idea. And originally, our committee was tasked with visiting other courthouses in the county, just so that you know the background. This was tasked with visiting other courthouses in the county to see what they did. And the general thing was to move towards building a new courthouse. But once we got into this and we started to interview the judges, the elected officials, and everybody who was actually going to use the courthouse, we found out actually that's not really what they wanted, and they are the people that are going to use it. The second thing that we also discovered was that there's a lot of assets in the form of buildings in that downtown area that belong to the county that are not being used. So instead of going out and looking at other courthouses, we began to look at can we do with what we already have and to make use of the assets that already exist. So when we went through it, we spent literally hundreds of hours on this. And my engineers, I'm an IT company, my engineers, when they come in, I come in the morning, sometimes they don't even know who I am. But
began to realize that we not only had to address the really, really urgent current needs, which are very, very urgent, but we had to address it in such a way to allow space in the future to develop as we grew. So we split this into 5 phases. The first phase was to address the immediate needs of the court system, and we found that by using existing assets that we could satisfy everybody's needs for security, space, maintenance for less than $10 million, which is a long way from the $140 million, and that would carry us out probably at least another decade. So phase 2, we had to look at the parking. We walked the parking lot and actually counted the number of parking spaces, and we discovered that there's 156 parking spaces, and there are 205 employees in the courthouse. So that parking space behind the courthouse is actually an employee parking space. It's not a public parking space at all. It's where the employees park, and even they have difficulty. Phase 3 was to consolidate all of the government offices, bring them all into one place, so the citizens, when they went to go and do business with the county, would be able to do what the county likes to call one-stop shopping. Phase 4 was to create what Conyers has always wanted, and that's a town square. We're the only city for miles around that doesn't have a town square. I think Social Circle doesn't have one, but I can't think of any others off the top of my head. And then phase 5, we're looking 30, 40 years in the future, what we would need to expand. And we talk about the future, that's a whole other subject, and I'll address that separately as to what our needs may or may not be. So we were given these instructions to do community engagement, that's what we're doing, to review a list of public concerns regarding the $140 million bond. We have an audit committee that is to do that, and then to determine a needs assessment and look at facility plans and to make recommendations based on those studies. These are the people we spoke to, and we spoke to many of these people more than once. Judge Owen no less than 3 times, Magistrate Court 4 times. So we kept on going back and asking for additional information based on what we learned. So as we learned one thing, it just raised other questions, and we had to go back and ask those questions. So we did a very thorough job of trying to find out what do the people who are actually going to use this facility, what do they want? On the $140 million bond, believe it or not, nobody asked them, not even once. What do you guys want? So we tried to address that. What we found, that the #1 concern they had, absolutely above everything, was security and the lack of it. That was every single person we interviewed, that was their first major concern. Followed by that was space, where we have the probate office in their toilet. That's where the coffee machine is, that's where the refrigerator is, and that's where they keep their cookies and biscuits. So they're definitely short of space. Maintenance in the courthouse, we have wallpaper that's peeling off. We have roof leaks that when it rains, the DA's office has got to put buckets out to catch water. That is now being addressed, and they're replacing the roof. And then parking. So these were the really, really urgent needs that had to be addressed. These were the grand jury recommendations. When we got them finally, and were able to look at them, we found that the grand jury actually had the same opinions that we did, and they got them from the same place, the people who were in the courthouse. So phase 1 was the urgent need for security. So what we looked at, if we take the probate court over here and the deeds office, and they occupied a total space of 4,827 square feet. Now, the probate court and the magistrates court were going to be moved into the clay building. But when we looked at it, we discovered, much to their amazement, that they were going to actually have a lot less footage in the clay building that they were having in their current premises, where they were already short of space. So if we take these guys and we move them out to the clay building, the probate court gets 2,500 square feet, where they only have 1,627 feet now. The probate court gets his own courtroom. He doesn't need a very big courtroom, he needs a small courtroom. He shares that with the juvenile court. When a juvenile is arrested, they must be brought before a judge within 48 hours. The probate judge gets the court 1 day a week. But if there was people arrested the previous day, they have to come before the judge. So the probate court is kicked out while the juvenile judge addresses those that have to be seen within the 48 hours. So although he has 4 days a month, actually he probably only gets 2. This way he would have his own court. When we address the magistrates issue, we'll talk about that. The courtroom that we would build there would have a jury box and would be a general purpose courtroom, so that when the probate judge on the occasion where he does need a bigger courtroom, where he does have to do a jury trial, and he does do those periodically but not very often, he would simply be able to go down to the magistrates court and do it there. The deeds office doesn't need a lot more space, so they get 3,222 feet. They have enough now. And anyway, most of these records are now being digitized, so as we go on, they will need less and less space. There's 870 feet of spare space that they would be able to do with whatever they wanted to do, whether that was to create a public place for people to meet with attorneys or whatever they wanted to do. But that would occupy the 7,592 square feet from the 4,800 feet they occupy now, and that would match what's actually in the clay building. Clay building, for those that don't know where it is, it's almost opposite the courthouse, and as much as the parking lot where the whistle post and the other buildings are. So the only concerns that they had there is that they asked if we would put bollards up in the front and the back, so that people couldn't, smash through the doors with a vehicle. But other than that, they were very happy about this plan to move there. The juvenile court currently occupies 5,000 square feet. So the juvenile court is spread from the 3rd floor all the way down to this floor here. In addition to that, the biggest problem in the juvenile courts, as we discovered, more important than security, was privacy. Right now, when you take a 15-year-old comes in shackles and a jumpsuit, he's paraded right in front of the public. There's no way to get into the courtroom without taking him all the way in front of the public. They then actually sit in this passage outside the courtroom. This is where you come in from Millstead Avenue, where the security is. So anybody walking up and down this passage can see all of the kids sitting there waiting to go to trial. Plus, other family members can see their neighbors' kids. It's not a good situation at all. In fact, what we discovered in that most counties now, what they're doing, they're separating the juvenile court out and putting it in a completely another building so that they can have the privacy and security that they need, where the only people in that court would be family members and they would be separated out. There's another issue with the juvenile court. In the Sally court, where the holding cells are, there's only 2 holding cells. Adult males and females have to be separated. Juvenile males and females have to be separated. So what happens now, if they have one female adult, she has to occupy that holding cell on her own. The males go in the other cell. The passageway in front of the cells is where the male juveniles sit. The female juveniles sit in the security room, where they can sit and watch all the security monitors for the courthouse and see everything that's going on in the courthouse. That's how it is now. So what we wanted to do was to take the juvenile court and move it across into 903, which is the auditorium. So the auditorium, which is the old auditorium for the church, that building has a 28-foot ceiling, and it has about 7,500 square feet. So if you had to double deck that, you could get 15,000 square feet in there. This would be more than enough to create a juvenile court in a separate building that doesn't have to have adult members of the public in it at all. They would have their own holding cells, their own security, their own everything. It would address the issue of security, and it would address the issue of privacy for juveniles that come in. The magistrates court, if you haven't been there, this is it, and it sits back on a parking lot, and as you can see, it's a double-story court, right? The only way that you can get from upstairs to downstairs is to go out into the street and walk around the building to the bottom door. There's no way that the judge can get from that floor to this floor without walking out the back of the building, around the building, and walking in the bottom door there. There's no other way to do it. So that is obviously a huge security issue. So if we look at it from the top, you've got, this is what the bird's eye view looks like now. What we're suggesting is that we create a smaller building here with an inter-passage that goes between the two. There would be a gate here with a brick wall that comes up, and therefore they would be able to come in, and they would be able to park right over here. It would be secure. There would be an elevator in this building with a walkway, so they could use the elevator to get up and down, and they could get from building to building without walking outside. This would also have a second court built in here, which, as I referred to earlier, would be a multi-purpose court. So if the probate needed a court with a jury trial, the state court had an overflow trial, there would be facilities here for a jury, so they would be able to basically use that court for anything that needed to be done. We have one permanent magistrate, but on many days there are 3 magistrates in there, 2 visiting, 1 permanent magistrate in there, all trying to use the one single courtroom. So there has to be a second court, state court is going to be built because we're going to have a second state judge. So if we totally clear out the space at the bottom, that allows a second state court to be built down there. It also allows the DA's office and the clerk of court to be able to get a lot more space to expand their offices. Right now, you have offices there that are about 12 feet by 12 feet with 4 desks in it. So when somebody comes in to speak to one of the attorneys, they actually lean over the desk and whisper to each other so the other attorneys at the desk, which are right next door, can't hear. So this would allow them to expand and get more space. So if you look at the total additional space, we get 7,500 feet over the clay building, almost 5,000 additional space at the court. We'd free up 15,000 square feet at the clay building, so we actually have 27,800 additional square feet of space available to work with, even though without actually building, other than the magistrates court, without building anything but using existing assets. In the courthouse, we free up 10,000 square feet altogether. 1,000 square feet of office space upstairs would not need any renovation at all. So if you add that up, we've actually created almost 40,000 feet of additional space.
That's a building space?
Square footage space inside, yes.
Well, what provision do we have for parking with this additional space?
We'll get to that. Okay. One of the other issues, if you've been up there, you'll see there's a lot of reserved parking up there where the elected officials park. But there's no security. They have to walk in the wide open, especially in the winter at night at 6 o'clock when it's pitch dark. They have to walk unprotected across the parking lot to get to their reserved spaces. So, if you know the court at all, the Milstead Avenue entrance to the court is about here. The entrance to the Sally Port comes here, and this road goes down in front of the courthouse. The reserved parking is over in this area here. So what we're suggesting is if we take this grassy area here, level it, we could then build a brick wall here and around that area here where the Sally Port is, along Millstead Avenue, and let them come in here. There would be enough parking here for all of the elected officials, and there are steps coming in here where they would come into the courthouse, and if you know the courthouse at all, when you come in here, you come out right next to the Superior Court. So they would have a secure entrance to the court, they would have secure parking, so even if they left after dark, they would walk out into a well-lit, secure area where they could get their car, and then come out here, open the gate, and go. One of the things we looked at was how to do this with the least amount of disruption. So the probate court and deeds office would remain exactly where they are while the clay building was renovated. Once the clay building was renovated, they would then move. So the only disruption they would have is actually moving, that there'd be no construction going on where they were trying to live in construction. The juvenile court is the same way. Once the juvenile court was finished in the old auditorium, only then would they move. So they would not be disrupted except for moving. They would not have to be disrupted by construction while they were there. Once the probate court, deeds office, and juvenile court had moved to their new locations, the first floor would be vacant. Construction would then be able to go in there. What you would do, instead of coming in on the Millstead Avenue side, you'd come in from the Court Street side, and the security would be there. And as you walked in, there would be nothing for you to go to on the first floor. You'd walk in the door, and the elevators are right in front of you. So you'd walk straight to the elevators and go up to the other floors to go where you needed to go. And so that area would then be completely renovated, and the DA's office and the clerk of the court would stay exactly where they are until that area was finished, and then they would move. So there would be very little disruption for them while all this was going on. So this gives you a bird's eye view to give you an idea where everything is. So here we would have the Superior and State Courts, the clerk and the DA's offices. The probate and deeds office would move over here to the clay building. The juvenile court would move over here, and the magistrate court would stay, but would have this extra addition here to give them the room that they needed. This plan could be executed in a reasonably short amount of time to address the issues of space and security right now. When you look at building a new courthouse, you're talking about 6, 7, 8 years out before all of the site plans, the architects, the storm drains, and all the infrastructure was taken care of. That's too urgent for that, and this, what we're proposing here, would solve the immediate issues, and we would manage to be able to do this in phase 1 for less than $10,000.
10 million.
$10 million, 10,000. For less than $10 million, you can see how think through, right? So for less than $10 million, and we believe that with the additional money coming in from the additional property taxes because of reevaluation of property, and some of the M&O money that could be freed up, this actually could be done within the Board of Commissioners' current budget without having to go to the taxpayer to ask for money. So, as part of the renovation cost that we took into account was the HVAC units need to be replaced. The roof has to be replaced, that's already actually being done. And the 2 elevators would have to be also overhauled or completely replaced. To restore the exterior of the brick and mortar and upgrades to make the building ADA compliant. Now, I'd like to just touch on that. There's 156 ADA issues that were brought up in the $140 million as to why the courthouse couldn't really be used because it wasn't ADA compliant. But when you actually look at the list of ADA issues, in several of the bathrooms, the towel rails are 3 inches higher than what they should be. Toilet rolls are 4 inches higher than what they should be. There are a lot of issues like that which make part of that 156 ADA list. There are some other issues, but many of them could simply be remedied just as part of the renovation. So in the $140 million plan, they budgeted $1.75 million for that. we presume that that number still holds and would be part of the $10 million. So the construction and renovation costs, we think could come out of the M&O budget, especially if you did it over 4 years. You could do it at $2.5 million a year, which is a manageable number. If you guys wanted it done sooner than that, because you guys that are in charge of this, it could be done much quicker than that, because renovations could certainly be done a lot quicker than building new buildings with all the infrastructure that has to go with it. So phase 2, we have to address public parking. We know, as we said, that there's 210 employees in the courthouse. Juries come there twice a week, twice a month. There's 135 jurors. If we have a second state court, there'll be 160. So if you take the 160 jurors and the 200 employees, you come up with 360 parking spaces that are absolutely necessary for the courthouse. And this doesn't include the public. So we figured, as you can see, this is our calculation, we figured that 500 parking spaces would serve our current needs for some time forward. So what we would do is to take the tax assessor's offices are here. This area is actually not occupied at all. So if we moved the tax assessor's office, we could build a 3-story parking deck here that would allow parking for 500 vehicles. We would put a lighted walkway, nicely landscaped, across to the main courthouse, so that when you park here, you could simply walk up to the courthouse if that's where you needed to go. Doing that, the secure parking for, we go back to that previous slide just to orient you, this would be the secure parking for the elected officials would be here. This would all then become green space where we could hold farmers markets, car shows, fall fairs, or whatever it is else that we wanted to do. We almost have a town square, but not quite. So the impact on security would be good. If you separate the government office, if you separate the parking out, you separate out the probate court and the deeds office, which don't need security. The security in the main courthouse becomes very effective because you have security in the whole courthouse, whereas now, for the probate and deeds, you don't need any form of security. So, a debt cost, and these are estimates, okay, because we're not architects, but the estimate on the old $140 million one was for 675 parking spaces for a cost of $12.1 million. If you divide that by that, you end up with $17,000 or almost $18,000 per parking space. So based on that, 500 parking spaces would cost around $9 million. Now, it's probably going to cost a little bit more than that because the original parking deck looked like exactly what it was. It looked like a big old concrete parking deck. We would recommend that the parking deck be bricked on the outside to make it look like a courthouse building. It would be red brick just like the courthouse. It would be designed to look like the courthouse, so it wouldn't be a big eyesore there that looked like a parking deck. It would actually look like part of the courthouse on the other side of the green. So that number might be a little bit light, and we think that that could be funded either through a SPOS or, as we learned from the Board of Commissioners finance person, they can actually get up to $25 million on a lease, where the lease payment would simply become part of the county budget. So it wouldn't be part of SPOS, it could simply be leased. So phase 3 was the one shopping that everybody, certainly in the Court of Commissioners office wants. So the parking deck would be built on a foundation which would allow all of the administrative offices to be on the top deck. And seeing as it looks like an office building anyway, it would look pretty nice. And that way, if you wanted to do business with the county, you would simply drive into the parking lot, park, take the elevator up to the top floor, you pay your water bill, taxes, see the tax assessor's office, get a business, do whatever you wanted to do. So any business you did with the county, you could simply go up to the county offices on top of the deck and this phase, again, would be for you guys to decide when you want it done. Phase 4, once you have the county offices up top here, all of these buildings become vacant. So the magistrate's court, which is down at the bottom here, could be moved, which is actually right here, it could be moved up into this area here. There's also next to the magistrate court, there's an accountability court of a building about the same size as the magistrate's court, which is in a bit poor repair. But there's only one person in that whole building. And their sole job is urine samples for juveniles, because juveniles can't give urine samples in the same area as adults do. So if it's a juvenile, they go to that one office that's in there to provide urine samples for drug testing. So that office is unoccupied really to all extents and purposes now. So the magistrate's court would come over here. Right now, SunTrust Bank sits right here. So this was going to be purchased anyway as part of the $140 million. It actually resides in a blind trust. So the city and the county could come together to provide that. If we did that, where SunTrust is, if you guys know where that is, it sits up fairly high. And then from there, it goes all the way down as a slope down to the bottom. So we actually have a natural amphitheater here where you could perform concerts and everything down here. And just like if you've been to Stone Mountain where they have that sort of incline up to watch the laser show, it's a completely natural amphitheater that sits here. Sheriff cars that were parked here, we create a small parking lot for them where they would park here. This would already be in existence. So Court Street and the parking lot would be gone. This street here would be gone, and Bank Street would be the new border. So now we have actually a complete town square right in the middle of town with a courthouse in it. So with plenty of green space to do whatever you want to do. This is the old jail. That's part of the Historic Society, and you're not even allowed to actually breathe anywhere near it. So that would remain exactly where it is. Probably in this area here or this area here next to it, there would be public restrooms for people that are on the park to be able to use. So this would give us a square. We have our secure parking, we have the courthouse, the parking deck, administrative offices, everything. So this, we're looking quite far down the road. Phase 5, who knows? I have my own opinions about this, and I'm going to address this in a little bit, but here's what we have to think about. First cell phone came into being less than 20 years ago. I know it seems unreal, but that's the truth, right? If you look at everything that's happened in technology since then, it's actually been amazing. We didn't really use the internet or email back there. Today we can't live without it. We can't live without our cell phone, especially when you see the lady in the back there. She's on her cell phone, or the person's back there, sorry about that, on their cell phone right now, a bit dark back there. So on their cell phone right now. So we're on our cell phones all the time. That's us. When we look at our kids, hey, you've seen them. They sit in the same room, at the same table, texting each other and sending each other funny messages backwards and forwards. They're going to be a whole new generation whose needs are going to be completely, totally different. We need to take that into account. When Orville and his brother invented the first controlled flight, Orville, the older brother, who invented this rickety machine with this old aluminum type engine built from stuff he'd learned from repairing bicycles, right? When they built that as a young man, Orville actually lived long enough to actually see Chuck Yeager break the sound barrier. Now you think about that, for how fast technology can actually develop. But if we in the future get to a stage where we don't, we're not getting marriage licenses online, we're not getting firearms licenses online, we're not doing all the stuff that we do with the probate court now online. Right now, the magistrates already, there's a courtroom down at the jail where they interview inmates in their cars. While they're in their cars using their laptops through video, they do the initial interview. So that's already happening. So what's going to happen in the future, who knows? In the year year 2000, we could never have predicted the cell phone and everything that we use today. So to sit here and say, well, this is what's going to happen 20 years from now, that's a tough call. We already have self-driving cars. We may not have need for parking at all. We may have electric driverless cars where we just do like we do with Uber now. We go to our phone, call an Uber, the guy's there in 5 minutes, we get in, he takes us where we want to go. With an electric driverless car, it'll pitch up, it's just a horizontal elevator. That may actually eliminate the whole need for a parking deck, and we may have to find something else to do with that 20 years from now. So, but if it's required, we did reserve this green space here with nothing on it to be able to build an extension to the courthouse to double its size with an overhead walkway to join the two buildings together. If that ever requires, is ever required 40 or 50 or 60 years from now, we are making provision for that. So we think that this plan, which is an idea, it's not a plan yet, it's an idea that we're presenting to the rest of the committee and asking for your support on, is something that for under $10 million probably carry us through the next 10, 15, 20 years, at least, minimum, before we have to think about anything else. The parking deck really has to come before that 10 or 15 years to address some of the parking issues. But beyond that, we would have a courthouse and a courthouse system that would be very, very affordable and carry us through, I would like to say 30 or 40 years, I think that's a bit long, but certainly 20 or 30 years out from now, we would have that. And if we do the renovations, we can have that done in a fairly rapid point of time. This is my little thing on the future, but it does give you an idea. 1981, the first PC ever. 1995, Internet Explorer. 1998, Google. 2000, the very first cell phone. Facebook, 2004. The first iPhone, can you believe it? 11 years ago. 11 years, you have a child that's 12 years old. They were born before the iPhone was even invented, right? If you have one now, by the way, dig around, they're worth $11,000. So, Chrome, 10 years ago. 2010, 8 years ago, the major manufacturers all got very serious about the development of driverless cars. So, when you look ahead in the future, you have to be a little bit careful because the way that the millennials see futures very different to us. They don't want to cut grass. They want to live within walking distance of a place where somebody else cuts the grass. They want to have access in walking distance to restaurants. Their idea of life is not ours. And we are trying to design a future for them, and we have to take that into account. We do have a website, communitycourthouse.com. Please, if you think this plan looks good, go there and cast your vote. Right now, as you can see, we have a majority that want it. We have a few folks that are voting no, and we have some folks that like some of it, but not all. But if you like this, please go to our website, communitycourthouse.com, and you'll see there is a link there, cast your vote. You can cast your vote there. And the good thing about the website is that as we learn new stuff and tweak it, make slight alterations, we update the website immediately. So the website will always be current with what we're currently thinking now, based on what we've learned and based on feedback we're getting from you both on meetings like this. I'd also encourage you to come to the meetings. The public, it's an open meeting, so the public are allowed to attend. If you go to the website, you'll see that there is a schedule there, which gives you not only all the meetings, but as we start to develop transparency by talking to folks like you, those meetings will be posted on there, so that if you're in the area and you want to come, come. Thank you. I appreciate your time. Does anybody have any questions?
Right here.
We'll take about 5 minutes of questions, so we want to get handled.
Ken, if you don't mind, because I have to leave to do my show, I'd like to ask you the first question,
Sure.
if everybody's okay with that.
Go ahead.
I'm in the some of it camp, and here's the reason why.
You're in? Oh, okay.
I'm in the some of it camp, and I'll ask you a question. What's the total cost for all 5 phases?
I wouldn't even like.
Right, this is why
I
I'm in
don't
the some
know.
of it camp, because
Yeah.
if we present this to the Board of Commissioners as a 5-phase deal,
Right.
we are writing a blank check.
No,
We need, I think my idea is to focus on phase 1 and only phase 1, present that to the Board of Commissioners as the plan. Otherwise, we don't have cost estimates or any clue what the other 5 phases are going to
that is
cost.
absolutely correct.
And they'll be
But
given carte blanche.
that is absolutely correct. They're not getting carte blanche because the recommendation will only come from the first phase. But both from other committee members and also when we do these things like this, people want to know, where are you going with this? Is there going to be green space? Are we going to have a square? We get these questions answered all the time. So if you go on with phase 2, phase 2 is not so bad, but once you start to get to 3, 4, and 5, I don't know, and not even an architect would sit down and tell you right now what the square footage building cost is going to be in 15 years. I don't have a clue. And so nobody can right now, anybody who gives you a number on that right now is just talking to the hat.
Sure,
They
well,
couldn't-
then
they could never know.
that
Yeah,
reinforces
so-
my point even more.
Yeah,
Why
so
present it
those-
as a
the other
bundled
phases-
package?
The other phases would have to be approved by the, so when phase 1 was done, that's all that we're going to ask the citizens to approve. Once that's complete, we would then come back and ask for approval for phase 2. And then, because at that point, you'd be able to ascertain cost, but there's no way that you can ascertain costs right now, it'd be impossible.
Okay, we're going to take one more question, and Ken will be available after the meeting, so if anybody has any more questions, one more. John, I think you have one.
The meeting, is that next Tuesday evening?
It's every second Tuesday.
Every second?
Every second Tuesday. So it was just this last Tuesday, and so not the next Tuesday, but the Tuesday after. So it's every second Tuesday.
And the presentation will be then made to the entire committee at that meeting?
This presentation was made at the last committee. The audit committee don't like this at all. They want a brand new courthouse. And so they're going to do their presentation next Tuesday on their idea of scrapping that whole area where the courthouse and everything is now and building a totally new courthouse. I don't know exactly where they think they're going to put that, but my suspicion is that there is 7 acres available behind the Maxell building on Parker Road. Probably going to put it, say that would be a good space. If you put it like Barrow County did, where they just put it way out, they went to a cow pasture and did it, it's very expensive because you have to do the infrastructure for water, sewage, and everything else. The other thing with the green space here that I didn't bring up, it does solve a lot of the stormwater issues that are a real problem on Bank Street, because we're going to have so much grass that there's not going to be a lot of runoff.
Okay, well, thank you, Ken. Like I say, he'll be around after the meeting. You guys want to talk to him. So now we're going to have our candidates roundtable. We invited 5 individuals. Of course, we had 3 accepted. Larry Cox, candidate for County Commissioner Post 2 here in Rockdale. We got Joe Crawford, who is the 4th District candidate running against Hank Johnson. And we have Takosha Swan, who's running for House District 90 against Pam Stevenson. So, and then Charles Chance will be our moderator, okay? So, we'll go ahead and get started. Thank you, everyone, for coming.
Always.
Sure, I'll show you.
Charles, do you need a mic?
I don't think so. Okay, look, we have some prepared questions, and after these, everybody's free to hop on with your particular question, okay? We believe very much in audience participation. To get this thing going, let me ask the board, pertains to this. Which part of this phase courthouse do you guys support, and why? Okay.
Well, I'm running for commissioner, and a plan will be presented from this committee to the board in January. If I win the election, then I will be on the board that will listen to whatever plan that comes forward from the courthouse committee. When I listen to this plan, it is a very complex plan. Myself, I like phase 1, I like phase 2. I don't really like to go past those phases because I think they are too far in the future. They would be a different generation that would have to deal with it. I personally support reconstruction, renovation, rather than new construction of existing buildings and courthouse. And I think we need to look into the 4-year time period with the parking situation and growth in Old Town, that the parking deck will probably be the direction we would have to go. I would not do it with the lease purchase plan that the finance director said to do. I would actually go with the SPLOST. With the SPLOST, there would be no additional millage rate increases on the taxpayers. There would be no additional tax increase on the taxpayers. The reason that the finance director would make that comment, I believe, to the committee, because they don't want to disturb how they currently use SPLOST. SPLOST is currently, in my opinion, in Rockdale County, not used properly. It is actually used for capital expenditures. It should not be used for capital expenditures. SPLOST is a special purpose local option sales tax. It is to be used for special purposes, but not for capital expenditure. So that's my answer to the issue. I will support, as your commissioner, a renovation of the courthouse and use of existing buildings to solve the space issues and security issues.
Kosher, Joe, do you guys want to add anything to this?
My answer won't be that long, so I'm not running through this.
What?
But what I like about it, I haven't seen the other plan. I've seen this one, I think my second time. I like that it's a renovation.
Speak up. Could you get the microphone?
Yeah, there's a microphone.
Speak up.
There's a microphone.
Yeah.
Okay.
There you go, we have a mic.
All right, I'm not as loud as Larry, so. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Thank you, Ms. Bird. Okay, so, what I was saying is that as far as renovation, I like the idea of renovation because we don't have to go to $140 million for a renovation, so I like the idea. I have not seen the other plan. I did take a tour of the courthouse. And when I took the tour, I was able to see that it can be renovated. That was actually the first thing that came to my mind. I said, okay, this can be renovated, they need more space. What can we do with what we have? And so the plan that Ken showed is what we could do with what we have. It's much quicker. The people that are in the courthouse, they can get done what they need to do in a much quicker time frame. If right now we just do renovations. So that plan was good to me. I haven't seen the other one, but I think that it is a really good plan because it's much quicker than the other one. I know because you're not starting over from scratch. And I know that it will be much cheaper because you're not starting over from scratch.
Joe, do you have anything you want to add?
I'll be very brief. Hello, everybody. Just like to say that I just saw this presentation. This one, I haven't seen the other, but whenever we start talking about spending taxpayers' money, I want to see what the impact is, present value, as opposed to just throwing numbers out. $100 million is a lot of money to be spending for renovations. I'm sure there's a lot of other places like schools, other areas that could use something. But what I saw here tonight appears to be something that could be used. From my standpoint, when I go to Washington, God be willing, that's going to be after November the 6th. I would think federal dollars should be looked at to see what can come down from Washington. I made a commitment that when I go to Washington, I'm going to bring Washington back to Rockdale County. I'm going to bring some of your tax dollars back here to use in this community. So I'm glad I'm here. Thank Mr. Chairman back there for extending the invitation. I'd like to come back. And I always said that what I'm going to do, I'm going to find a way to work with mayors, city councils, commissioners when I'm in Washington, because that's where it's at. I would just be cautious about spending the money and making sure that we have present value when we're building that type of facility.
Does anybody have a question for the board? Ken?
Larry, would you like to discuss the shortage of police officers and why that is and what you intend to do about it?
Can you repeat the question?
Larry, would you like to perhaps address everybody on why we have a shortage of police officers theoretically and what your plans are if you get elected to the board to fix that?
Ken, that's not only a shortage of police officers. First of all, that's just what I refer to that as phantom employees. It's not only the sheriff's department, but it is every department that is in Rockdale County. They have employees that are not actually employees, that they get paid for. Let's just say the sheriff's department, for example, is an easy department to pick on because they have 50 vacancies. Of those 50 vacancies, I don't think we really have 50 vacancies because they have carried 25 to 30 vacancies for the last 6 to 8 years that I'm aware of. That is a way to actually get a slush fund account because they get in their budgets now the salaries and the benefits for those employees that are not hired at this time.
Up front.
Up front. So what my plan would be not only for the sheriff's department, but it would be for any department in Rockdale County. You would present the number of employees that you have on the rolls at that point. What is your shortage? But then you actually have to tell us how many do you actually intend to hire this year. The sheriff's department has never hired 50 employees. They have never filled those vacancies. Even when it was down to 25, they have never filled those vacancies. So I would do this, and it would actually, it's what Newton County did this past year. I've been talking about this for 2 years, and I think Newton County stole my idea. And I'm okay with that, because it was a good idea. You say, okay, you're 50 short. How many are you really going to hire this year? They'll tell me 15 or 20. Well, that's a similar thing that the Newton County sheriffs did. We're going to hire 15. You take that salary and benefit for those 15 employees, you put them,
Cost.
yeah, and everything, and you put that money in a contingency account. When you hire that employee, then the money that's associated with that employee will get shifted to your budget. If you do not hire that employee, that money does not come to your budget. I estimate that Rockdale County, by implementing such a policy, would save $4 to $6 million a year out of the general budget by not funding phantom employees.
Any
And that money
questions?
could be used to a courthouse renovation project.
Does the board have anything else to add to this?
I just like to say that with the vacancies, and we got veterans turning back to this country every month. Seems to me that should not be hard to do, to fill those positions with military guys. Last time I checked, veterans were looking for jobs, and some of them trained pretty well in law enforcement, I would think. So I would think that would be a good area to look at.
It would be if they were real vacancies. But they don't intend to hire those people. That's what we really need to look at, is when you actually put that money in that contingency account, I think they'll be forced to hire those 10 or 15, but they would never hire 50 people because they have, the county historically, the county departments have used those funds as slush fund, and they just shift it to where they want to after they get the money. Because Mr. Holmes actually asked the chairman, once we give a department this money, do they have to spend it in a line item fashion? And his answer was no. Once a department receives its money, it's a la carte. They can do with what they wish.
Anybody have a question? Yes, sir.
I noticed on the ballot that there's a question about the 1% sales tax for education.
That's the East Block.
Yeah, in East Block.
Repeat the question, Larry, for us.
Yes, there's, on the ballot, there is one of the referendums or resolutions to agree to or not agree to for a 1% sales tax to go towards education on top of what we have. And isn't our education department getting more than any surrounding counties?
We have, You know, that's, nobody here is running, but, I mean, I will answer that. Rockdale County is one of 3 counties of the 159 that are actually allowed to have a millage rate that's above the state law. Because we, 20-some years ago or such, on a Christmas Eve, had an election, which 3 or 4% of the people turned out, and it was voted on that we could go up to 26% on an educational millage rate. And I think our BOE budget this year is $163 million. The Board of Education actually gets 78% of the property tax that is collected by the assessor's office. So they do get the lion's share of the county's money at this point, and this eSPLOS is, I think, a renewal of an old, they have an eSPLOS that's expiring, and they want this additional penny. And that's up to, you know, taxpayers to decide if they want to throw that additional penny to education or not. They say they're going to use that, but from what I've read, I've not had any educational people say anything about that yet. I've not been to a forum they held, but I think there's going to be a forum on the 8th or such that they're going to discuss it, and they're going to use it towards security is what I'm told, the majority of it. That's what it's been said.
I think they go on your heartstrings, that this is for the children, for education, and they already get so much money, and I think it's like the sheriff's department for employees that they don't pay, or they don't hire. They're just extra money they keep asking and asking for.
Can I put in a little bit on that?
Yes, you can.
When we met with Cherry Oaks, because we were looking at that Pine Street School as maybe a parking lot, but we discovered that in actual fact they're going to move the campus from the West Avenue to where the Board of Education offices are now on the Millstead and down the side road, right? And Millstead and Main, not Millstead, whatever that other road, you know where the offices are. They're going to move it from there to Pine Street, and they're going to move the campus into those buildings. So they're waiting for the approval of the eSPLOS to do the renovations and create a parking lot over there for 250 vehicles.
Well, I want to add something, and I'm going to throw it to Kosha because it's going to go to her lane after I add what I add. The educational SPLOS, unlike our T-SPLOS or our county SPLOS, does not have an oversight committee. There is no citizen oversight committee that runs the educational SPLOS. It is ran directly by the school board and the Board of Education. Unlike our SPLOS that we get, that we just referred to, that we would build the parking deck out of, which is used for transportation dollars, the Board of Education does not have a citizens SPLOS committee to direct the direction of that 1 cent eSPLOS. So what I would ask Ms. Swan, if she's elected to the state legislature, would she look at possibly mandating that if BOEs have a eSPLOS, that they are required to do an eSPLOS, a citizens SPLOS committee, so that those dollars can be directed by the citizens group, just like the regular SPLOS.
Okay, so you're saying a separate group of citizens in Rockdale County?
Right now, when we do our SPLOS, there is a SPLOS committee, which Mr. Chance has sat on. Has anyone else sat on the SPLOS committee in here? Charles is the only one that's been on the SPLOS committee. The SPLOS committee determines how the SPLOS dollars are spent. With the educational SPLOS, there is no citizen input, even though the citizens are the ones who voted to give this 1 cent. They have no input afterwards. Would you, as a legislator, would you introduce legislation that required Board of Education to also establish a citizens SPLOS committee to manage that money?
So a local Board of Education, because, so right now, we already have a state board that's like that's over all of the local.
Yeah, but we're talking about an eSPLOS. And the eSPLOS is the 1 penny that the county votes, then you're going to get probably $67, $70 million out of the SPLOS over a 5-year time period. The Board of Education spends that money. The SPLOS that the county does, the citizens group directs how the money is spent.
Okay, but the Board of Education, the state board
It's not the
overlook,
federal.
they overlook the Board of Education.
Not with respect to these,
No,
to spending this SPOS money.
with spending the SPOS money, it would be the state legislature who would mandate that there would be a citizens group that would oversee this.
So what I would do is, I would do some research, and I would look to see exactly what the Board of Education, the state Board of Education, I would look to see everything that they do first. They do, I agree that there should be some oversight, but first I would look to see what's already happening here. Is there some type of oversight to that? I hear that you're saying that it's separate.
And there
But
is
I'll
no,
still do,
and there is no
I'll still do
oversight.
research and make sure. So if there isn't, then at that point, I would work with you and others who think that this is something that should happen. That's the whole purpose to me of town hall meetings. You come together and you talk to the people in the area, you talk to the citizens and find out if this is something that the citizens think should happen. Because if this is created, you need people, you need citizens to be a part of it. If there is no one that is willing to be a part of such a committee or a board, then, there's an issue right there. So the main thing is, I would do what I do with everything, and I would do research. And part of that research would be to speak with the citizens of Rockdale County to find out if they also feel that is an issue.
Any comment for the board?
Even the extra millage rate that they get, what are they doing with all the money? They get more than any of the other counties, and there's no accountability, for what they do, and then they want more. So I just don't get it, and nobody oversees that. So that's what we need to have some accountability there for, not only asking for an e-splash, but for all the millage rate taxes that go towards it. Are our teachers paid more than other counties?
And our schools rate very low.
Yeah, so where is the money going? That's the thing.
Well, I mean, none of us are
Top
educational
heavy.
people, so that's really, we've been out of our wheelhouse here for a little bit. So,
Well, I would say in regards to your concerns, I would say one of the things that I have already committed to do, and that is to come back and to meet with people on the city council, commissioners, and elected officials on issues of transparency. We need that in every level of our government to let folks know where your monies are going. That should not have to be something you be concerned about. That should be something that we, the people that you elect us to have power to whatever degree you elect us to have it, we should be responsible enough to walk out, reach out to you guys and say, hey, listen, how do you want us to behave? You want us to be transparent? I think you would be, because we're citizens too. And I think that's the first thing I would start with, transparency on every level.
and I think that on this table here, that's one thing that I think we all have in common, and that's the desire for transparency as elected officials.
And accountability.
I have a question for Mr. Crawford. Where do you stand on gun control? I've listened to your opponent, Hank, talk about how he would confiscate folks' guns in a slow, methodical way, a little bit at a time. So by the time you worked up to the fact, you would be turning in your weapons. Where do you stand on the issue of gun control, gun confiscation?
Well, first of all, I think it's ludicrous. No one take my gun, I tell you that right now. I got a 38 special. My mama gave it to me. And Daddy, before he passed, left me to go live with the Lord, he gave her his 38. He had a rifle. And where I come from, we had beans and greens every day. Except maybe on Sunday, had some chicken. But if we didn't have guns, we didn't have no meat. And we had it for protection. And I would say to everybody in this audience and everybody everywhere else, anybody think about taking guns from us, I'm not going to say it, but you know what I want to say. They got some issues with sanity. And I would say it like this. One thing I want us to do is to return a profit back to you. And the only way we can return a profit, we got to yank Hank.
Yes, sir, go ahead.
By the way, my daddy was Mr. Prophet. I'm joking. Yes, sir. All right, thank you.
So, not to take all the focus off of the county, because the county's important, but you replacing Hank Johnson, I wanted to get your idea of what you thought about America First and about the borders and what we need to do, how we need to handle that, to bring the wages into the different counties and to keep the wages in America high enough that, I mean, because I just know, I mean, I'm kind of like you, my parents were very giving people. If they had $1, they would give 50 cents away. And that's just the way Americans are. So we don't have to worry about nation building. We're going to do that. But what are we going, what's your perspective on America First and making sure that we're building the infrastructure of this nation?
Well, just let me say this. First of all, I would say God first. And when we put God first, naturally America is going to be first. That's how I look at the world, and that's how I look at myself. When we start talking about what happened on the border, what I say to folks here and other places, let's see what's happening in our communities. Let's see how we can educate our kids better. Let's see how we can work with each other like we used to. See, when I grew up, somebody needed a roof put on the house, everybody pitched in. You didn't have to ask, they show up. And you're talking about the money. Listen, my daddy, I remember him getting 50 cents worth of gas, okay? And I also remember him never taking charity. And there were times when we needed help, but he would say, let me do something. And if they wouldn't let him do something, he wouldn't take it. So I would say to guys like Hank Johnson, they need to get a life and get a real job. Because any time it takes you 12 years to do something, you haven't done it, it's time to make a change. So I would say to you that, yes, when we put God first, America's always first. Thank you.
Anybody else want to make a comment here? I want to digress for 1 moment. Eleanor brought up a good point about the resolutions and the amendments. What would be very helpful if each of you were to look over these amendments and email Toby your opinions about these things so that we can take a look at it and see if we're going to say something as a Republican Party about these amendments. But we don't want it to be just a small group of people. We want everybody's input, okay? So it would be a majority type thing, and I think we're going to be bringing it up at the executive committee, the amendments, what, if anything, should be our positions on these things. And we really need your input on it, okay? So just email your thoughts on any particular amendment, or all of them, to Toby so that we can go ahead with it. Any comments or questions on that? Okay. Next question. Okay. Now there are a bunch of problems that we in the county face, and they overlap with other counties in various voting districts and so forth. What mechanism do you guys propose to address these overlapping issues? And do you have any specific issue that goes outside the county but affects the county? And why is it important for all of you guys to be working together on this? Anybody?
An overlapping issue, one I know for sure is transportation. In DeKalb County, they would like a MARTA, and they've been paying for it since I believe 1972, I want to say, and they don't have it. That's another county that I'm representing, and I also have Henry County as well. So Rockdale is only one of the counties that I have 3 counties. As far as overlapping, if they receive MARTA in reference to traffic and different things like that, Rockdale will feel that as well. That will overlap into the county. So in reference to that and us working together, as far as like that coming over into Rockdale County, that is some information that I will get from Larry, the specifics on that and how that would affect them, which would also affect my decision on DeKalb County receiving MARTA, even though, they pay for it, and I believe that they should receive it. Rockdale County would need to prepare for that traffic that would be moving over in this area. So that's one thing.
Well, and I think that would be a little bit controversial in Rockdale County, because I think Rockdale is split on the MARTA situation. So I think that that's something that I think that we can do ballot questions, and we can ask the citizens, do you want MARTA to come to Rockdale County? And, I've talked to a lot of people in the county about this, and Democrat and Republican alike. And to be honest, it's probably split, Democrat and Republican alike, because it depends on their perspective of it, where they lived before, they've had public transportation, not had public transportation, and their fear of what public transportation may bring. So I think it's what we really need to look at and analyze. What do the citizens of Rockdale County actually want in Rockdale County?
Joe, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Go ahead, and we'll take the question after Joe.
I just like to say, as far as working together, I think it's imperative. I was checking out the sign over there on the wall, unite or die. Over there, if we don't unite, we will die. We will die as a community, as a nation. It's going to be over. We've been told since we were, at least I know about it, a house divided won't stand. But let me just address MARTA and how we can work together on that. I think it all depends on how it's presented. Because I just came down here. I was in a meeting in Marietta. It took me an hour and a half to get over here. Now, in most cities our size and even smaller have rapid transit. And the fear of bringing in trouble, to me, that's old time talk. Right now, our kids and our grandkids, and we need traffic relief. And people going to start thinking of us like they're thinking about Hank Johnson. Something wrong that we can't get along. So I think we should, and we just got to retrain our brains in how we think. Because I don't see, and I know everybody got their opinion, but I just don't see how bringing in rapid transit is going to be bad for a community. Now, I will say this, if they bring in undesirables, they need to get fixed. Okay? But we shouldn't let that kind of fear stop us from progress. That's all I'm saying. And working together, I would talk to the state legislature. I would talk to the councilman and say, listen, guys, let's try to present it in such a way. And also that the people that run in MARTA may be able to they may have some different approaches as well. Because the right leadership, I think they would explain to everybody that you don't need to fear about MARTA coming because it's progress. And if it's done right, it's going to help every community. That's how I feel about it.
You got bids.
Takosha, you said DeKalb County wants MARTA. Are you talking about a specific area of DeKalb? Because I know a lot of DeKalb County has MARTA.
Southwest DeKalb County doesn't.
Okay.
They don't have it right now. And like I said, they've been paying into it since I believe 1972, and they thought they would get it back then. But no, they want rail.
Well, I guess Indian Creek is the only station that they've got in that part of the county.
Right, so Southwest DeKalb is Wesley Chapel, Snapfinger, Rainbow, that area.
Yeah.
So unincorporated Decatur area, that is the area mainly where they want a rail.
Well, the guy wanted Indian Creek is what I'm saying, right off 285.
No.
Yeah.
Indian Creek?
Yeah.
Yes, Indian Creek. It's on that, yeah.
Okay, so they're
It's
wanting
in the
one
area.
more like Candler Road area.
Yes,
It's mainly, yes, Candler Road area, because,
Okay.
yeah, that's closer to, 285, and that is like at the top of,
Well, that's at
the district I'm
920.
representing, but it's more south.
Yeah, okay. Because I know they got Brookhaven, they got, Indian Creek, they got,
But Brookhaven is, that's north,
yeah, I know.
I'm talking about, and
Southwest
DeKalb,
DeKalb.
yeah.
And
Gotcha.
and there's been a big push recently back, really with Stone Creek, I believe, is
Right.
really an area that wants the MARTA also.
We got somebody over there.
So I have a question, I guess, really directs to you, Larry, and then maybe Ms. Swan, you can comment on it. So the fear of people in Rockdale, or some, having MARTA, do you think that's more of a reliability issue? I know MARTA isn't that reliable. I know that currently right now they're working on that, and that's one of the reasons why Metro Atlanta possibly could lose a Amazon deal because of the transportation issue. So for Georgia as a whole, we know that transportation possibly, we could be losing out on high-paying jobs. Is that the concern of the people in Rockdale, other than the perceived crime that might come in and is not reliable? And then the second part of that question, since it is a fact that MARTA is unreliable, when you are elected, what can you do or what do you propose happen so that MARTA can be more reliable, so that we can bring in those high-paying jobs, so we can increase the middle class income?
I'll go first and then pass it towards the discussion. And I think Joe hit on it when Joe answered the question. Joe said that the fear of undesirables being brought in on the rail. And I'm actually somebody who I'm sort of on this issue with Joe. I really don't think that those people that someone would consider undesirable are just going to get on the train and, let's go to Rockdale and hang out. I mean, I personally don't think that's going to happen. I would actually tend to agree with you that I think the biggest problem that we would have with the MARTA system would be the dependability, reliability with the system, as it's an aid system, aging infrastructure, and we've just not spent a lot of money on it. And I think people would be concerned of what type of rail would come. I think light rail, I think people might not be as concerned about as something else that would come. But I think that is the concern. I think people are concerned about crime increasing, because Rockdale County over the last 10, 12 years has increased with crime. We do have a growing gang and drug issue in Rockdale County, which we've recently acknowledged it does exist. And but that had nothing to do with white rail, basically.
So is that something that you could point out that, crime is increasing in Rockdale and
MARTA had nothing to do with it, and I do, but I do think this, even though that I'm in the same opinion as Joe, I personally don't have an issue with MARTA. I don't have an issue with white rail. My job is actually not to invoke my will upon the people. My job as county commissioner would be to have group meetings, to have town halls, and even though I would be for something, if the majority of the people in Rockdale County would be against light rail and MARTA, it would be my job to represent them and unfortunately say at this time the citizens of Rockdale County are not ready for this, even though I personally would be in favor of it.
You might want to mention about jobs being a factor more of education or transportation.
Tendency of MARTA in any kind of public transportation, it's like they can charge the user, and I don't want to pay.
So, what I would do is, in reference to even that article, in the paper, because I saw that article too, about Amazon. So, again, I would go and look at, and do some research, because obviously, and they should have, Amazon did some research concerning MARTA to, in reference to them, making some changes. So I would go and I would look at, some statistics, some numbers. I know that MARTA, as far as the upkeep of MARTA, I know that it's not good. I've just read about it recently. And it's really, from what I've read, it's some simple things that can be fixed. For example, trash cans. There are areas where the MARTA bus goes. You can't take any drink or anything on the MARTA, but there's no trash can there. So areas are looking trash because people have to put it somewhere and there's no trash can. Sometimes it's a simple fix if people would just go in and look at the issues and just look at the area to see what's going on. It's not always a fix that costs millions of dollars to get things fixed. It's mainly some accountability which we can say over and over and over again, some accountability, and some resources that we put out there, and make sure that we enforce the things that are supposed to be done. If those things are not being enforced, unfortunately, things like that can happen. It becomes unkept, and all those type of things happen. So things need to be enforced. The workers need to be held accountable, and the staff. I've met at different meetings. I've met the MARTA, the president of MARTA, and they seem to be open to be available for meetings and different things like that. So at that point, you have to sit down and have meetings, and you have to have conversations, and you have to talk with these people. To me, everything involves meetings, research, getting together, sitting at the table, and finding out, what needs to happen. A lot of times we look on the surface and we look on the outside, we really don't know what the remedy is or what the issue is. The way that the issue looks on the surface is not always the root issue.
Well, just very briefly about the transportation. There are a lot of federal dollars available tomorrow. They're getting a lot of those dollars. I can assure you that that's happening. I don't know where the dollars are going, but I will say this. Most of the time, it's about leadership. It's about who is in charge. And that could be looked at very closely. I'll also say this, too. When I came in, I think Larry was saying like 10% of the folks do all the work. When I look around this room in here, I don't see any young people. That bothers me. Because when we go, where are they? They need to be with us, listening, trying to bring them in. I know that I got 7 kids, and they different. But I make sure that they are in tune to what's going on, because if we don't train them in a way to start getting involved in their government, because like you said in that presentation, we're making things available to them that we don't have a clue about what it's going to look like in 20 years. But they're going to have to live the consequences, and then we're going to have to suffer the consequences. They're going to be in charge. So I would just think that whenever we can, encourage young folks to get involved with our government, their government. So the transportation thing is something, millennials are coming. We want better schools. I don't think it's fair to have the taxpayers that own homes to keep paying all these taxes. Let the corporations come in and pay some of those taxes. That's what I want to do. I want to make it friendly, business friendly, so we can get them to contribute to our community as well. So transportation to me, I think is good. And again, Larry, I think if we can work together as a team and talk to folks and listen to what they say, and then try to help them to understand that some things that may not be clear to us right now, but collectively we can work them out. So.
It's getting late, but I'd like to direct one more question to Joe. What committees do you expect to serve on, and how will you and these committees specifically benefit Rockdale County?
Well, transportation is, I think, is one of the greatest committees we can have, but that is the future, and everything we do with this project I just saw, it's going to be around transportation, parking, bringing folks in, and hopefully we're going to grow Rockdale County in the future, because most of our young folks are going to be leaving, and we all know that. I mean, most of mine are gone already, and they go for different reasons, but they don't stick around. So transportation would be one that I'd like to look at. I'd like to look at energy. I would like to look at the things that I would think agriculture, that was, when I was working for Reagan in the state, I never ran for office, but I was working for him in campaigns, and I was appointed to several federal jobs. Transportation was one of them. International trade for policy was another one. The FCC, those type of things. But what I think would benefit Rockdale County more would be agriculture and transportation. And
There
somewhat
isn't
maybe
much agriculture in Rockdale County.
Well, no, but we have a lot of folk that in and around Rockdale County would have agriculture that makes a difference. And we are, in fact, Georgia. So, yeah, one of the things I want to do is work with all the counties in and around Rockdale.
How about Veterans Affairs?
Veteran Affairs, now you hit my number. Yeah, Veteran Affairs. But when I get on Veteran Affairs, I won't just be talking about it, I'll be actually helping the family.
Any questions from the audience? Well, I don't want to keep everybody unless you guys want to say something and wrap this puppy up. That's it, guys.
All right.
All right, thank you.